All right, for more on what is currently transpiring in Tshwane and, of course, the Phala Phala matter, let's now welcome governance expert Professor Theo Venter to speak more about this. Prof, thank you so much for your time this afternoon. Let's start in Tshwane. I mean, Celia's Brink saying that if the motion of no confidence against him does go ahead, in fact, the council is currently sitting on that, it will create, he says, a political instability in Tshwane. And I mean, we've seen political instability in that in that city, for instance, in as far as service delivery is concerned. Just what do you make of what is happening currently?
Yeah, what we're seeing is a very bad situation for the city of Tshwane in general. Taking it from the water problems in Hammanskraal down to whatever developments you want to look at. Over the last 18 months, I think Celia Brink did well as an executive mayor in terms of doing what he ought to do, and the most important element of that being to upgrade the financial standing of the city of Tshwane. The city of Tshwane was struggling with the Auditor General for years, 5, 6, 7 years, and then in the last year or so, things started looking better. They got things sorted out with Eskom. So there are several things that you can mention, but I think eventually the political situation has become his downfall. It was uncertain about a week ago whether the ANC would stay out of the fight or whether they would join the fight due to what the national ANC is saying in terms of the government of national unity and all the issues surrounding that. But it was clear the role of Panyaza Lesufi in Gauteng, and it was further clear that the ANC is now looking not only at the mayorship of Tshwane, but they're looking at the mayoral positions they're having in most of the metros in Gauteng towards the 2026 election. So for them, I think it is a strategy towards the election rather than only the Tshwane situation. For Celia Brink, it is a Tshwane situation, specifically doing the best he can for that city. So I think we're in the middle here of a very important development regarding the positive sentiment that was created around the government of national unity. And the sentiment was that if it happens at national level, then it will filter through to provincial and to local level. And when a government of provincial unity was established in KZN, that strengthened the idea of something like that happening. But I think the challenge the DA and the ANC got in Gauteng changed that positive sentiment in a way. So what we're seeing here, although Celia Brink may lose this motion, and he may not be the mayor anymore later this afternoon. That's my expectation. I don't think the battle between the leadership of the ANC in Gauteng and the national leadership is over.
Yeah. And I mean, Prof, you say a number of important factors, and I want to touch on that, but I also want to just remind you that we are monitoring those developments at Council, and we will go and take our viewers there as soon as we are able to. But just on the points that you are raising, you're right in that there was some hope that given the government of national unity at national level, that decision will then somehow trickle down to local government. But that's not, of course, what we're seeing in Tshwane, in Gauteng, primarily because of the principle of the GNU being to serve the people. Just having a forward-thinking look then in terms of the 2016 local government elections, I mean, is the ANC not setting itself up in a difficult position here, given the sentiment around, are they for the people here, or is this about the ANC putting the ANC first?
Well, I think your last sentence sums it up. This is the ANC looking at survival. Remember, they got out of a national election with just around about 40% of the popular vote. Now they're going into local elections less than 2 years from now, where the issues are going to be very similar to the issues that they confronted at the national level, because over the last 10 years or so, issues at national level and at local level were basically the same. It's all about service delivery. It's about good governance. It's about load shedding. It's about water in the taps. All those kind of things are now national and local. You can't distinguish anymore. But the final word is with a voter. And I think if we read the survey research correctly, and if we listen to social media, and if we look all around us, the issues of service delivery is still a very pressing one. Now we don't have load shedding, but the cost of electricity has now almost replaced load shedding, and that is going to be even more pressing, especially on those having difficulty financing and paying for their monthly survival. So yes, the ANC is looking at how can they breach 35% in Gauteng, 40% nationally. And I think their strategy is, if we get the mayorships of the big cities, especially Gauteng, we can then show that we are doing things better. Yep. I think they are strategically misplaced in that suggestion, because I do not think the issues around service delivery can be resolved in 18 months. This is a much longer project. Maybe.
Yeah, let's look at that, what everyone else cares about, and that is service delivery. And to your point, long-term sustainable solutions. I mean, whilst the latest audit outcomes do show that there has been progress in Tshwane, some residents in areas like Mamelodi, Attridgeville, Hammanskraal, etc., are still lamenting long service delivery issues in their areas. How then do we start looking at that kind of forward-thinking by political parties and, of course, an active citizenry to make sure that service delivery does ultimately happen?
Yeah, there are several things here, and you're absolutely correct. If you want to change things around, I think what a political party can do and what politicians can do, the first thing which they have control over is good governance, to take the correct decisions. Now, that is a large portion of an audit outcome. Were the decisions taken and the money spent in sync with each other? That's really what an audit outcome tells us. So that they can do. They can stop the whole issue of tenderpreneurship. That they can do. They can change that through all kinds of legislation. But if you have a funding issue, if you don't have enough money, and that's the problem of Tshwane, then it's very difficult to even resolve some of those issues. Let's take Hammanskraal. In the case of Hammanskraal, people died because the water were not clean. And it was a problem well known to Tshwane, but they did not have the resources to change that. So National had to jump in, Department of Water Affairs, to assist in doing that. Now, that is the way to go. So first, good governance. Second, the right choices. And then thirdly, looking for partners, especially in those areas where spatial development was not done well, where electricity supervision or installations were not done well. And part of the moans in Mamelodi and a few other places is where they deconstructing these informal electricity connections, because part of funding a local government is you pay for service. That is the basic element. And then the second part is you get the money that people owe you for the services that you've rendered. But if the people have the perception that the services aren't rendered well, they wouldn't pay. Yeah. If they open the taps, there are no water, then they're very hesitant to pay anything. So there's a give and take here, but it starts with the politicians doing the right things.
Yeah. Prof, I want to just quickly touch on this other matter that we are, currently highlighting on the show, and that's the Phala Phala matter. Of course, there's new developments here in the form of President Cyril Ramaphosa, going to court and submitting his submissions on the back of the EFF submission. I mean, he says, of course, arguing that the EFF waited a year after the Phala Phala saga was put to rest and just a few months shy of the elections. Now, outside of what we're seeing in the courts, and for the sake of transparency transparency and accountability. I mean, can we really put Phala Phala, to bed? Is that something that this country really needs for a sitting president to basically be saying that matter has now been put to rest?
No, I think Phala Phala has become an albatross around Cyril Ramaphosa's neck. He tried everything. He tried to resign, and then his own people said to him, we'll not allow you to resign. Then Parliament came to his rescue, very similar to the Nkandla case, where they formed a lager around him saying, you won't touch the president, because they had 57% of the vote in Parliament at that time. The situation now has completely changed. The question is, if this thing goes to Parliament again, on the back of what the EFF is doing, the way in which parties are going to vote in Parliament is going to be significantly different. Because now the ANC, if this thing again appears in Parliament in some way or another, they will have to negotiate an outcome. They can't just whitewash the whole thing. But what the president did and the presidency did and the ANC did, they used all the stops, whether it was the Reserve Bank giving a very, very illogical kind of explanation, whether it was the public protector looking at it at a very, very narrow angle and not going that I think wide enough, like the public protector can do, whether it was FICA legislation, what. I think albatross, the Phala Phala remains an albatross. And since it's still out there, unresolved, gives somebody like the EFF the opportunity which they're currently taking.
All right, Prof, thank you so much for all of that. And let's leave it there for now. Professor Theo Venter there for us, of course, just touching on a range of issues that we are monitoring for you this afternoon. Of course, all eyes are being on that Tshwane Council, and we'll continue then to give you feedback in terms of what is happening in as far as that motion of no confidence against Tshwane Mayor Brink is concerned.